welcome back to my Warhammer lore. In today's video, we'll be delving once again into the Beastmen, the true children of chaos. Specifically, the Minotaurs, their importance in Beastmen society, and also a tie-in with the sacred places to the Beastmen in their Herdstones. As usual, the source material for this video will be taken from the latest army books, the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd edition Bestiary, and the Warhammer Fantasies novels. So, with that little PR statement out of the way, let's get into the lore proper, beginning with the Minotaurs. In my previous Beastmen Society video, we went over the hierarchy of the herd and the various types of Beastmen. It is important to note that there are several subspecies of Beastmen in addition to the standard gores and ungores that are seen running with the herd. This includes centaurs, the half-horse horned people infamous for their drunken activity, and of course the Minotaurs. The Minotaurs, however, are very unique in Beastmen society in that they are more often than not the most likely of Beastmen to receive the favor of their gods. This could be due to their massive size and prodigious strength, their unbridled appetite, or, of course, just their lust for blood and war and violence. Of all the Beastmen, the Minotaurs are the hardest to control and one of the definitely heavy hitters of their roster. And of course, being favored by the gods, there are further splintered subgroups of Minotaurs that make up some of the more unique elements of the Beastmen roster. But we are slightly getting ahead of ourselves. First, we should discuss what a Minotaur actually is, which most people should be able to guess. They are a half-man, half-bull hybrid. They have massive amounts of musculature, and they easily can stand 8 to 10 feet tall, if not taller than that. They typically have two large, wide horns, but they can have more than that depending upon mutations. The gaze of the gods does often come with consequences. Not all of them are desirable. Their chest and arms are mostly human, and the lower half is that of a bull. Besides the rippling musculature, Minotaurs are known, or well, less known, for their intelligence, even amongst other Beastmen, which is saying something, as most Beastmen would be considered on par intelligence-wise with the village idiot of your nearby Empire settlement, which makes Minotaurs exceptionally dense individuals. But the trade-off appears to be that they are much more larger and stronger, which in Beastmen society is everything, as we discussed last time. Because of this, Minotaurs naturally have a spot at the top of the societal pyramid just from being what they are, strong and bloodthirsty, which is another defining feature of the Minotaur. You see, for some reason, Minotaurs are possessed with an almost unnatural craving for fresh meat. This, of course, is preferable to be man flesh, but any meat will do, including other Beastmen, or even other Minotaurs, which is why they are both respected and feared amongst the herd, as more often than not, a friendly Minotaur is only so friendly while it is being fed, and the moment it gets hungry, which is always, anything and everything nearby is a possible main course. And the Minotaurs, for their part, are much more particular than other Beastmen, as they do crave their food to be fresh. Now, this doesn't mean it has to be alive, though that might be preferred, but they do not tend to eat anything that is beginning to rot or fester, like with maggots or flies, things of that nature. Whereas your average Beastman would be more than happy to eat the week-old spoiled human leg just to survive until the next day. Not the Minotaur. The Minotaur would rather challenge another Minotaur to the death and eat him than resort to that spoiled meat if they have a choice. And as long as we're on the subject of eating, another little caveat to the Minotaur's hunger is that when they do get a hold of fresh meat, the act of them gluttoning themselves almost has a kind of euphoric spiritual connection to them and the dark gods, meaning that when they actually eat, they are communing with the dark forces and share just a smidge of their power in the process, which, as you might guess, is also why they are constantly hungry, as this kind of worship might incite a kind of almost addiction similar to the Skaven and their warpstone. Now, Minotaurs tend to form their own tribes, separate from other beastmen whom are ruled by the biggest and the strongest of their numbers. They are nomadic, like all beastmen, and are drawn to the sound of violence and above all, the scent of blood, which draws them to the Herdstones, the sacred monoliths of the beastmen, as often the revelry and sacrifices to the dark gods meet both of these requirements. During these gatherings, just the sight of red can trigger the hunger of the Minotaurs and spurn them into a blood frenzy in which only fresh meat will quench, as the red color reminds them of their blood-red gluttony. Speaking of Herdstones and Minotaurs specifically, certain chosen Minotaurs are charged with protecting these shrines and many others, as well as tombs and graves of former Chaos champions deep in the forest, where even the beastmen do fear to delve too deep. There are much more older and more ferocious things than just beastmen in the woods in Warhammer. These chosen Minotaur champions will often kill and eat any trespassers near their charge, and are known to pile the remains, weapons, and armors in heaps and offer their kills in reverence to the Chaos gods. Often these piles grow so high that they will obscure the totem or grave they are protecting entirely from sight, further protecting the holy places from discovery. Oh, and while we're still on this topic, the Minotaur herds, while they do often form their own herds, that does not mean that you wouldn't have a smaller tribe or a smaller contingent of Minotaurs than just your average herd, as kind of like big, heavy shock troops. That wouldn't be unheard of, or even of a Minotaur tribe being pulled into a larger herd as a whole, as the Bray Shamans usually will draw on them and make them into heavy shock troops, is what they are. Now, however, not all Minotaurs are chosen for guard duty for these sacred shrines, as you can tell. Some are chosen as champions of chaos as well, in addition to just being your average Minotaur. They are giving all but the blessings any human chaos champion would receive, including armor and weapons, which is somewhat unique amongst beastmen kind, as more often than not, the beastmen, when gifted by the dark gods with favor, usually are given this in the form of mutation, rather than arms and armor. Now, I'm not saying that beastmen are only rewarded by their patrons with vile mutations, but they are much more prone to it than the gifts granted to the average human chaos worshipper. These exalted Minotaur champions are called Doom Bulls, and are both praised and feared by their kind. Doom Bulls are often blessed with gifts that would be found pleasing to their particular patron. For example, a Doom Bull of Khorne would be covered in perhaps blood-red fur, and hit much harder, and often have a frenzy that your average champion would not. Whereas a Zanbull, or follower of Tzeentch, are actually considered skilled sorcerers, possibly even rivaling Bray Shamans in ability. Though these would be very, very rare, because most beastmen that are capable of magic would be Bray Shamans. So this is definitely not the norm. And being champions of chaos, Doom Bulls are called to lead armies of the followers of the dark powers, including other beastmen, chaos warriors, and even demons. So they are given prime leadership roles on the equivalent of any champion of chaos. They are not limited to just leading beastmen. And now would be a good time to actually discuss the Herdstones, which are in fact a focal point of beastmen society. These stones can be of varying sizes and shapes, but they are all focal points of dark magic, specifically the raw powers of chaos. These sites are often deep in the forest or landscapes traveled by the more civilized races. They also tend to be built over meteors of fallen warpstone, the raw stuff of chaos, literally. The Beastmen and Minotaur tribes do their best to conceal these holy sites from outsiders, and as spoken of earlier, it is not unheard of for Minotaurs to be charged with guarding these focal points. At these obelisks, rituals are conducted and offerings are made to the dark gods by the Cloven Ones. all in hopes of earning favor with the Chaos Gods by leaving the banners, weapons, and armor of fallen enemies at their feet. The ground around the area is often littered with ankle-deep bones and rotting meat from leftover sacrifices. During certain points in time, the herds are gathered. A raging signal fire is made at the center of every herdstone, and the Bray shamans will throw in mind-altering herbs and carrion, creating a very unique smelling and colorful smoke that will draw in beastmen herds for miles, and the fires will rage for days on end. The gathering herd's war leaders will leave their individual mark on the stone and camp nearby as they feast and sacrifice to their deities. All sacred days to the beastmen are celebrated at such herdstones across the Warhammer world. Because of the nature of the herdstone, most races will give them a wide berth just instinctually, but there are always those drawn to the chaotic energy, especially those of perhaps rat-like origin. And so many Minotaur tribes and even normal herds will answer the call of protection from the local Minotaur guardians if foreign intruders dare attempt to defile these sacred places. For the beastmen rarely unite without the aid of the dark gods. They are very prone to just murdering each other, but exceptions are made for their holy sites. Specifically, these herdstones are to be treasured above all else and will be protected to the last beastmen, which is also unusual of their kind, as they are also cowardly. So, just goes to show you the importance of the herdstone and what actually it means in their society, and just kind of their religious aspect, that it is what actually draws them together and drives them forward. But enough about herdstones. Let's circle back to our primary focus in the Minotaurs. And you might be thinking that we have covered just about everything you could think of to cover about Minotaurs. But there is one more facet of their existence that transcends the normal and embraces the more mutative aspects of chaos, meaning that just as Minotaurs are much more likely to garner favor of the gods, they are also much more likely to become overly favored as well, and can become horrendous creatures of legend, even amongst the own kind of being their fellow beastmen and not just Minotaur tribes. And so we delve into a subspecies of Minotaur, the first of which we'll be talking about are the gorgons. Now, gorgons are beyond massive creatures, obviously descended from Minotaurs with their bull-like heads. They have 4 huge muscled arms and are known to wield equally large weapons in most, if not all, of their hands, or simply just use them to crush people and pick them up and eat them. They in fact are the size of a giant with large spikes protruding from their backs, and are driven by a deep hunger known to the Minotaur, but on an entirely different level. They also are known to have multiple mouths to shove in their food with their multiple hands. Now, gorgons are rare, very rare, and for good reason, as they are also known to be capable of eating an entire beastman tribe in a single night, and hunger is very much what drives them. They will eat just about anything as long as it is fresh, and the bigger the better. As far as the birth and all subsequent appearances of gorgons, all we can rely on is that the Bray shamans, which are somewhat in charge of passing down beastmen history, which is mostly oral, agree that the gorgons appear to have been Minotaurs at some point in the distant past. More than likely, the gorgons are the largest leaders of Minotaur tribes who chose to let their hunger and desire for meat supersede their role as leader, and so they ate, and they ate, and they consumed even those of their own tribe. It is believed in beastman society that to eat a creature is to absorb their power, and so the cannibalistic acts repeatedly over and over again of these Minotaurs resulted in them growing and growing, and the favor of the gods granted them boons in the form of their extra arms and unnatural strength, as well as their even more so insatiable appetite. This very same appetite has led many to suspect that the gorgons may not only be eating flesh, but possibly they may be consuming massive hunks of warpstone that reside in the deeper forests, from whence the great collapse happened and rained down the world in the glory of the dark gods. Of course, it could also just be the nature of the tainted beasts that they tend to feed on that has garnered them favor with chaos, and they are all gifted with more than just their massive forms and arms as boons. They are also known to be heavily mutated, all in pursuit of making them more efficient at getting a hold of fresh meat and therefore tribute for the dark gods. Only the most powerful of Bray Shamans can actually summon and then bind a gorgon to their will, and at least point the beast in the direction of the enemy, where then it needs little direction as to what to do, as its natural instincts to feast take over and a blood-soaked carnage begins. It is important to note that gorgons will not, they're not completely immune to damage. They are capable of a mild form of almost regeneration after they consume fresh meat. And that about wraps it up for the gorgons. A very interesting, very thematic unit in my opinion. Now on to the next subspecies of Minotaur, the saigore. Now, unlike gorgons, the nature of saigores is still a bit of a mystery, meaning there is no clear-cut reason as to how they came about. But we can suspect a few things. But first, what exactly is a saigore? Well, a saigore is a colossal beastman the size of a giant, with one single glaring eye. They only have 2 arms, but do have a large cluster of horns, putting them in high esteem with the cloven ones. And of course they have a very bull-shaped head, relating them to minotaurs. But they, however, do appear to be cursed by the dark gods. They seem to only be able to see the winds of magic, or the realms of chaos as it were. This shift of reality drives every saigore quite literally insane, as they do not actually see the physical world, though they exist in the physical world. And instead, they see the winds of magic. They see the stuff of chaos constantly, which makes them seek out magical places, items, and beings to vent their anger and satiate their minotaur-like hunger. Of course, the saigore does not have the same cravings a normal minotaur would. No, they crave the actual soul of their victims, and quite literally eat the souls of anyone they get a hold of to satiate their unending hunger. And of course, those with the more magical properties are always the more filling. Because of this, saigores are known to be drawn to beings that possess powerful bound magical weapons, or more likely any spellcasters that may be nearby, as these beings light up in their cursed vision, and the saigore is drawn to this potential morsel like a moth to flame. Their very presence on the field of battle has been known to, at the very least, distract any magic casters, or outright foul their magical power, as they know that this enemy is specifically coming for them out of everyone present on this battlefield, and their very souls are at stake. Now, in order to actually close in on their prey, because most of their prey is going to be very range capable, saigores are known to carry with them large stones, either pieces of a temple, a fractured elven waystone, or some other magically inscribed rock, as these are the few structures they can actually see, and hurl them at the enemy before they close in to collect their feast. Now, similar to gorgons, saigores are drawn to battle by the will of the dark gods, the intervention of powerful Bray Shamans, and of course, in this case, the discharge of large amounts of magic, as this serves as essentially just a beacon of light that urges these colossal abominations to turn their one cursed eye to their next meal, which will never satiate their unending hunger. Now, as far as how the saigores came about, I have a few theories. The one that I give the most credence to is that the saigores were minotaurs long ago, and perhaps a tribe of them may have fell into disfavor with some of their chosen deities, and they were cursed, literally. And of course, as is the case with most chaos entities that fall into disfavor, the curse is terrible for those cursed, but it definitely benefits the dark gods in some way. So having a giant behemoth that is constantly enraged and seeking out magical places to either destroy or consume is definitely something that the chaos gods have in their back pocket, and very, very useful to them. So it makes sense to me that this would be the case. Of course, there's always the case that it could just be a very bizarre mutation that happened long ago and then kind of just stabilized, and there haven't been many since. But I choose to believe that it is actually a curse that happened long, long ago, and maybe still happens to this day to certain Minotaur tribes that might fall into disfavor. So that's the way I see it, but of course, it's not in the books, so we'll never know. So it's up to your own decision what you would like it to be. Now, I do like to cover this particular topic when talking about each creature, as some of you find it very interesting. But if you have been paying attention, prey-saigores and gorgons are products of mutation and possibly a curse of the dark gods, of existing Minotaurs. And so these creatures are not reproduced by natural means, but by the ways we just went over in their descriptions. Minotaurs, however, are a different story. Now, the army book is not very specific on how any beastman is created, but we do know that centaurs, when bred, create more centaurs, as there is a very famous centaur hero which literally had a legion of its own children as his vanguard. But there is no mention of centaur women, and so I don't think there are actually female centaurs or female minotaurs, which means that either minotaurs that breed with beast women create more minotaurs, or even captured humans treated in the same fashion, or it is also possible that any kind of beastman can be born from any kind of beast woman. We simply don't have the information, but I am of the mind that minotaurs make minotaurs, and so on and so forth. So that's how that happens, but definitely the gorgons and the prey-saigores are curses and mutations in a way, so they cannot be reproduced by conventional means, let's just say. Oh, and before we close this out, speaking of minotaurs once again, I would be very berated in the comment section if I did not mention that one of the most famous beast lords, or heroes in a way, was Torox, the brass bull. And yes, you heard that right, the brass bull. You see, Torox, being a particularly ruthless and violent example of his kind, caught the eye of the chaos gods, and so after one bloody battle, the gods sent a demon to converse with Torox, whom at the time was a simple minotaur. Torox, seeing the demon approach him, immediately killed the demon, and then proceeded to eat him. Not a good thing. Not a very good thing. For his brash behavior, the dark gods filled the Minotaur with more rage than he had ever had, and he went on a bloody rampage for over a year of non-stop killing. He killed literally everything in his path, including his own tribe of Minotaurs. And he did not rest. He should have died, but somehow he stayed alive. However, after his curse subsided, he found that the dark gods still had favored him. His body had been coated from head to cloven hoof in brass, with the exception of a very small area under his chin. I know that's very foreshadowy, but that's literally the way it was written, making him ridiculously hardy and all the more angrier than he had been before. He currently leads a tribe of Minotaurs and Beastmen. That is, of course, before the end times at least, and no, we will not be going into the end times yet. It will happen one day, but not now. Of all beast kind, the Minotaurs and their subspecies I find the most interesting, especially the gorgons and the prey-saigores. It's a very unique, almost mythical properties about them that just makes them very interesting to me. So I enjoy that facet of beastman culture. Of course, and the Herdstones and all that. I just like beastmen. I would be a beastman, well, or maybe a ratkin, I don't know. Why don't you guys pick one? Which one would you guys be? So, anyways, I think that about covers this video on Minotaurs and the Herdstones of the Beastman tribes. As always, guys, if you have questions about anything in this video, feel free to leave it in the comment section, and I will do my best to answer what I can or include it in a future video. If you are new to the channel or a simple loyal subscriber, I love you guys. Feel free to both like this video, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. It helps me out quite a bit and helps the channel grow, as well as keep these lore videos coming. So thank all of you in advance for doing so. I would also like to say thanks, guys, for being patient with me with the releases of new lore content. It's been difficult lately, especially after, you know, the whole baby thing and work picking up and so on and so forth. I don't want to bore you guys too much. As usual, I have been Jumbo Thick. There is more lore to come, and I hope to see you all very soon in the next video. Have a good day.